Alert for so long, but I'm afraid I have to stop you. Here is Israel's defense minister for the next 48 hours only if he announces his resignation. Now let's take a listen. Owen Altman will be relaying Lieberman's remarks through paraphrase. Let's take a listen.
Too many microphones. Good afternoon to everyone. I'll open with a few words and would be happy to take questions. In any case, I assume everyone tried to guess. You saw this meeting, and I think you guessed correctly. I am indeed here in order to resign from my position as Defense Minister of the State of Israel. The question is asked, why now? And in my perspective, what happened yesterday's ceasefire, in combination with the whole process of arrangements with Hamas, is a submission to terror. There's no other meaning to this except submission to terror. What we are in effect doing as a state, we are buying short-term quiet, and the price will be difficult for our security in the long term. It's not a secret that there were also, in the past few months, disagreements between the Prime Minister and myself, and I'll simply remind of the issue of issuing Qatari cash, which I thought was a mistake, and only after the Prime Minister issued a written statement, I was forced to allow the money inside the strip. The same is true in the evacuation of Khan al-Ahmar. A Bedouin tribe on the state land in a strategic location on the road 1 between Ma'ale Adumim and the Dead Sea. I thought we needed to evacuate, and also in this case the Prime Minister issued a written statement and forced the evacuation. Also on other topics, I will not list them all. There were also disagreements that also, despite disagreements, I did not look for reasons to leave. I tried to stay as a loyal member of the government as much as possible in order to keep all the disagreements inside, even at a price electorally. The two I said couldn't happen. Part one was the interest of $15 million of Qatari cash inside, $15 million in cash that came through suitcases. And everyone who says that there's any kind of inspection of this, what would happen with the cash after it went across the border of the strip, they're simply not precise in the least. Whoever follows this, whoever follows Arab social media, understands where the money went. $15 million. Where it went, first of all, it went to those same families of the terrorists who fought at the borders with IDF fighters, who threw grenades and were killed in those issues, those battles. Those families were the first to receive money from those same $15 million. That is to say, on the one hand, we're passing in the Knesset, in the parliament, a law against terror, and at the same time we're handing money to terrorists in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip. That is not, I cannot tolerate that. And the second point of difference was this very ceasefire. And in my view, all the 500 rockets that were fired at the south of the state of Israel, the response we gave was, to say the least, not enough, not appropriate, and it was not possible to accept this. And I understand and recognize all the excuses and all the explanations. I understand all the circumstances, all the intelligence, and always there's north, there's south, there's east, and there's west, and there's an inner circle or an outer circle, up, down, it's all excuses. As for the logical order of the security, we had to first and foremost to end the story of the South. The story of the South is more important than everything. And this hesitation that we showed also has an impact in other arenas. I would not continue to stay on as the defense minister. Were I to be able to do that, I would not be able to look in the eyes of those of the South, not to the Shaul family or the Golden family, to the families of two citizens who are in captivity to Hamas. I think that we had to put all of the progress in the issue of humanitarian issues in Gaza to condition them on two things at least. Even those who agree with this arrangement with Hamas, first of all, an arrangement on the entire issue of the captives and the disappeared, and of course that Hamas is required not to bring even one person to the border of the Strip. I want to remind you what happened from the days from Thursday until Sunday. On Thursday, between Wednesday and Thursday, $15 million of cash came into the Gaza Strip. On Friday, Hamas brought with payment 13,000 people on buses to the border of the Strip to fight with IDF soldiers. 44 injured, 1 killed. Grenades that were thrown at IDF troops. This was the day after they got $15 million. 1 day later, a Palestinian entered into the incubators of a neighbor community and burned them. This is what happened in the last round of elections. I never was glued to a chair, and there was never a contradiction between a seat and principles. We, as a party, always chose principles. I can remind you the issue of the disengagement. Israel Beitenu was the only party which in full voted against the disengagement in the parliament. We had no problem with being in the opposition. We were part of a coalition in meaningful positions, both before the Annapolis process and we left, and also in the issue of the Shalit deal. It was very uncomfortable to sit opposite the family and to explain that I would not support the Shalit deal, and I also voted inside the government against it. Even with all the discomfort, and it's clear in retrospect that that was the correct position. And also when I took my position as defense minister, also in the issue of an apology and a reconciliation with Turkey, I voted against it, against the apology, and even now in retrospect we see how much that principle was correct. It's clear that from now, both we as Israel Beitenu are going to be getting a wave of accusations, of briefings, of commentaries, but we have dealt with more difficult issues, and I'm sure we will deal with these attacks and these libels as well that will pop up everywhere on all sorts of websites, on all the tweets, on the Facebook posts, and so forth. What I am also requesting is that as quickly as possible to summarize and to put on a agreed date of elections as soon as possible. And we must stop also with the submission to terror and the lack of clarity on our goals politically and diplomatically and security, and also not to put the entire country into sustained freezing. We'll have a meeting between the heads of parties, and we should have a meeting with the heads of parties to get to an agreement, a date for elections, and the voter will decide what to do. Thank you very much, and if there are any questions.
דפנה, בבקשה. כן, שר הביטחון ליברמן לשעבר, קודם כל אנשי נתניהו אומרים שכאשר הפרוטוקולים נחשפו, התברר שלא באמת נלחמת עבור ההחלטות שאתה מציג היום.
The Prime Minister is saying that the protocols say what you're not saying today. And that you are leaving. I'm not going to respond to what the particular people, but to the issues that were raised. And security discussions are not a friendly discussion. There's drama. There are tapes. And I would be happy if everything were revealed. But beyond that, I think that the line that we have been taking in the past few months is totally mistaken. I came into the government. Everyone knew what my positions were. I fought for them from inside. But it's impossible, from the one hand, to prevent all attack and all offensive action against the terror and Hamas. What is this? They came over 48 hours and I'm still alive? That's pretty much what happened. If you ask me, there is no reason why those terrorists, those heads of terror in the Gaza Strip, should feel lighter and should feel more free, that they come to protest at our border and incite against the state of Israel. Hamas is not talking about coexistence, not about recognizing the state of Israel. They don't want to talk about how to improve the situation of employment in the Gaza Strip. In their budget, $250 to $270 million a year, they're simply... And there is a lot of confusion here. They talked about that the reason to insert money is because of Abu Mazen cut the salaries of officials. Abu Mazen cut salaries to the functionaries of the PLO, but not functionaries of Hamas, who he never paid. A totally different group of people. The same group that Abu Mazen cut their salaries. They're not getting anything. The people getting the money are only the money who are identified with Hamas, not the officials of the PLO. I think that also in this case, responsibility is of the entire cabinet, of the entire government. And I don't want to attack anyone personally. My position is different. I fought for it from inside for 2.5 years. And where we got, I will say again, to 2 points of departure. One, the insertion of the $15 million in cash to Hamas people in the Gaza Strip, and also the ceasefire after the firing of 500 rockets, or almost 500 rockets, to the south. These are things beyond what I can tolerate. It's clear that in politics, you can never get everything, you have 100%, and sometimes you have to compromise. But you must set a clear boundary of what's possible to accept and what you're not able to be flexible on. After the bringing of the cash and the ceasefire, it's beyond the flexibility that I can tolerate. Is it possible that this government will be more offensive than what you're describing? I don't think that you, as a journalist, in terms of your failure, you are a journalist with a viewpoint, not a journalist who really asks a question. I think as a defense minister, I can point to a list of achievements, and the first and foremost, to administer the Kiryah I think there were many disagreements, but I administered the defense building in the correct way, with a lot of quiet. The system was administered in the correct way, in a quiet way, and you can't compare to other periods. Also, the period of appointing a chief of staff, I think I administered it in a transparent way, in the most statesmanlike way possible. And also on other topics, I can't get into. This is not with the military reporters, but also with the same process of putting up a state of missiles that's still on the way, just to put up this internet site in Arabic through which we are communicating with populations also in Judea and Samaria and also in Gaza. That's also part of those things. And so therefore I think, first and foremost, that in my perspective, again, in the 2.5 years, there were many, many things to point to, but that's not the question right now. I think that the public must still demand that their affected officials of the national camp must also fulfill their promises, not just to make statements, but also to implement. And I think that the public will have its piece and what line it wants to see from the next government that can be implemented. Defense Minister calling for an agreed date for elections, but are you? And who did you speak with in the coalition? Did you talk to the Prime Minister before this? I don't intend to talk with the heads of the coalition until I give a written resignation, and then I'll have that. I'll first talk with my wife, then with my partners in the party, now with you, and then we'll see what happens. And I think that this one way or another, the context will start already today. Is it already lost? It's their right, and the right of everyone, to hold its opinion, one or the other opinion. There's no monopoly on smartness or on justice. I think that, in my opinion, that we work in this situation to set a date as early as possible that's agreed. Mr. Defense Minister, 2 questions. Yes, I'm resigning with my entire party from the government. I said 2 questions. There's always you and an extra. People are saying that this process you are doing is cynical and politically. First of all, as for Moshe Kahlon, I did not discuss with him. I didn't talk with him. There's no coordination, first of all. Second, as for a process of all sorts of libels and slanders, before coming to meet you, what do you expect from the... You think that people are going to give me compliments? I don't expect that. And therefore, the cabinet meeting ended only yesterday afternoon, and I don't think that it went too long. Also, even yesterday evening, that I said I was going to have a faction meeting and then have and then I came to tell you. Not even 24 hours have gone by from the end of the cabinet meeting. So your 4th question. It's not the first time that Israel has submitted. Listen, I didn't look for reasons to resign. I said my intention was to try to go on for as long as possible. Clear that you're never going to get everything, get 100%. As long as I could try to influence and have an impact from inside, I thought I tried to influence more than a little bit, even when there was more tougher reactions that we heard in the last round yesterday. There were turning points that at certain point it would not allow me to fulfill my job and to stay as a member of the government. That is not about my government. There are different parties, different people with different demands, and you'd always try to get to a reasonable line and straight line. It's not where you decide where you can compromise and where you can't. I said what happened yesterday at the cabinet meeting was simply beyond the flexibility that I could show. Mr. Lieberman, two quick questions. Well, first of all,
ראש השב"כ, ראש המוסד, כולם התנגדו או תמכו בעמדת הממשלה הקבינט של הלאומי. דבר שני, כבר יש לי אותה שאלה, אם כל העניין שדבר עליו הוא באמת כל כך חמור, לא דרשתם לתום הדיון לתאמת.
first of all, the responsibility is on the state, and I respect all of those in the defense system and all of their interests in the of Israel. All responsibility falls in the political echelon, and the people who set the policy are on the political echelon. So I don't have any complaints against the defense echelon, but I think that the political echelon failed and did not reach the correct decisions. As for, what's the second question? I think that my opinion was brought dozens of times, also in the cabinet, also in defense discussions before the cabinet, in smaller forums, and also in public. I don't think that anyone didn't hear me in the past few months, didn't understand my position, what I demand, what I think should be the correct policy. Everything that I said in internal forums, I also said in the open forums. There was never a dissonance between what I said in a closed forum and an open forum. Therefore, I don't think that you don't have to get into, and I don't know if I will get into, see what the head of the defense establishment, none of them were interviewed, what was in the cabinet or wasn't in the cabinet. The fact that people are using and talking about what was in the cabinet and leaking it outside is a very serious issue. We put forward a law talking about what the status of the cabinet was, and unfortunately it was not moved forward, and we have to make order that a cabinet, people will treat it with seriousness, and I hope that everyone will support our bill that says that every cabinet member must, once a year, without connection to anything, to go through a polygraph test on one question, and one question only. Did you leak from cabinet meetings or not? And I think it's critical that the results will be published also in public. And therefore, as long as this is not there, people will use cabinet meetings and with materials from there for political needs. You were a member of Netanyahu's government, also as foreign minister and defense minister, and also as the chief of staff of the prime minister's office. Would you be in the next Netanyahu if he were chosen? And do you have confidence in Netanyahu? Listen, I am giving lack of confidence not in the people, but in the policy. And it's not a personal fight. It's not a personal issue. We have a disagreement on the path, on the approach of the political and security approach. And as long as the political and security worldview would be with our spirit and would also be able to implement it, and not just to list it, then we would be happy to be part of. Members of a government, I don't eliminate anyone. I'm still, you have to understand how many mandates there will be. I hope everyone will vote for Israel Beitenu. We'll have 20 mandates. And then we'll have lots of jobs. But I think I am not ready for a situation in which we're entering a government. We signed a coalition agreement that was put on the Knesset table, on the Parliament table, and the entire coalition voted for it. And then afterwards, in the Ministers' Committee, you're voting for, and then you pass the death penalty to terrorist bill, and then you simply freeze it. And then afterwards, you simply do everything to torpedo it so that Israel Beitenu doesn't have an achievement. That's a reality I'm not willing to tolerate. Everyone should know who we are. The agreement was written, everyone saw it, and everyone voted for it. And then afterwards, they did everything possible to torpedo it. So I'm not willing to be in those movies. I think the minute that we voted and everyone agreed to it, then I hope this will be in the past. Again, listen, in the state of Israel, there's no direct vote. I think that, as you said, I was already chief of staff of the Prime Minister, Infrastructure Minister, head of the Foreign Defense Committee, Foreign Minister, Defense Minister. I think that if there were going to be direct elections, I would have a strong position. Right now, it's not relevant. We voted one slip for a party, and from now and going forward, my status is to bring the largest number of mandates possible. I don't want to give, and we'll do everything in order to succeed in the coming elections, and afterwards we'll discuss positions. What a smile you have that it's our last meeting. Two questions. What was happening behind the scenes in terms of appointing the chief of staff, if you want to discuss it? And the timing of your resignation also gives wins to those who want to make changes to the conscription bill. Listen, first of all, I think we had a process, a very organized process to the appointment of a chief of staff. For the 20th of the month, the committee for a senior position is set to approve Avigdor Liberman to be chief of staff, and I think that we will be complete this entire process. That simply went a little longer than what I would have liked to have seen. The second thing, as for Chaim, as for the conscription bill, look, our position was very clear. As long as we were in the coalition, and now that we're not in the coalition, there is an excellent bill. Everyone voted for it in the first reading, and there's no reason to change even a comma. At least we will not agree even to change a single comma in the conscription bill. I said that along the entire path, and I believe that, and I'm satisfied that we'll bring it to pass it even without us. And I want to remind you, the conscription bill was voted on not only by the coalition, but also by the Yesh Atid faction. And I think that the Yesh Atid faction will not agree to any change in the conscription bill. And therefore, there's an excellent conscription bill. Any change is like to change something out of a construction, and it could topple the entire construction. The bill should pass as it's phrased now, with every comma in every period. Hey, did you talk to the Prime Minister face-to-face, and what were his reactions? I did not talk with the Prime Minister, and First of all, as soon as after I resign from my position and the resignation will go into effect, I will also be ready to talk with everyone, including the heads of the coalition, and also with the Prime Minister, and everyone who would like to. As for the second issue of Hamas, I think I'm happy that you're so excited with the Hamas announcements. Mr. Defense Minister, over the course of the last year, the Prime Minister didn't give you backing. How much did this hurt you? All of the attacks from my cabinet ministers, I'm very proud. Because if they're attacking you, it's a sign that you succeeded, that you exist. If you failed, you don't exist, then nobody would pay any attention. So I always learned that in politics, as long as they're attacking you, then your situation is good. And as for the other things, I'm not so sensitive to get backing or not get backing. That's less important. Everyone should do what he thinks is right. Or do what he wants. If you're so against all of these arrangements, why did you meet the foreign minister of Qatar? Thank you. Listen, I meet with all sorts of representatives from the Arab world, and I must say that, at least from their side, I never saw anyone that was interested in the Palestinian issue. That's the last issue. If it comes up in the conversation, if it even comes up in the conversation at all, there are all sorts of bilateral issues, regional issues, international issues that generally come up in all of the meetings with all the representatives from the Arab world. I didn't see anyone there who was so excited to talk about the issues of the Palestinians. Thank you very much.